We are officially post satire.
This is post satire, my friend.
I mean, are we not? I mean, God, I mean, you and I grew up with this. I was on the tail end of Duck and Cover, and they're just as stupid as before.
Well, I mean, the reason I want you to put that up is because today is Hiroshima Day, 77 years ago today, August 6, 1945. First nation, only nation ever to use an atomic weapon on civilians. I think about 200,000, some estimates between 150 to 220 were killed immediately in the blast. So I guess they could have stayed in the middle of their apartments in Hiroshima and stayed away from the windows. A lot of good it did them. That's the most preposterous PSA ever created in the history of the world.
And it was created this summer.
Right. Now.
2022.
Yeah.
That's why it's hilarious. Why don't we do Reefer Madness now? I mean,
Reefer Madness. This is the atomic warning for Reefer Madness. I mean, wow. I also had Duck and Cover in school, but we went into the hall. And
we know it's the 5th. It's close enough, Alan. We're rounding up.
Yeah.
Our Australian, we have Australian viewers. It's the 6th. So because we are an international show, damn it, we're covering.
We're covering it. Yeah, it's because we don't have a show on Saturday. You happy now? Somewhere it's going to be August 6th in the middle of this broadcast. So we figured we would deal with that now.
Well, in a half an hour, our Scottish mods, it'll be, well, no, not quite, but by the end of the show, it'd probably be past midnight there.
Right. So, in their train stopping gear, they're going to come over and moderate the thing. But yeah, I mean, look, that PSA showing you, first of all, the apartment. I don't know anybody in New York who's ever had an apartment that size. That's 40,000 square feet with brick walls and some sort of a loft in Soho or something. But I guess they're talking to their own people. They're talking to elites. That's who they're saying you could survive this, you elites. You know, I mean, the government will go into Mount Weather, right, Hunley? They'll go underground into that city beneath, and I guess it's in on the East Coast in Virginia, the mountains there.
West Virginia. I think.
West Virginia, yeah. They'll be down there with the Mothman underneath the ground. And
I want to say Iron Mountain, but it may not.
Yeah. No, isn't it Iron Mountain?
It's something like that. I can't remember.
We should do an episode. I want to do an episode on this anyway. I got a couple of books on that, on how. You know, the whole thing with each government official has a double. Eric, there's a Secretary of State. There's a Joe Biden who's 95 years old who looks like Joe Biden. There's a Kamala Harris who is, you know, half Indian, half Jamaican. They've really done a good job this time, you know, getting the doubles of the government and getting them into Mount Weather, which is going to be, you know, their next move because they are convinced that they will survive a thermonuclear war.
Okay, and yes, it is the anniversary of the Marilyn Monroe death,
right?
And we did do a show on it.
Assignation or assassination?
I think it said assignation, but I think they meant assassination.
Okay, all right.
What are we gonna do? And okay, so it is Freeform Friday. I wanted to introduce it, and like any kind of Freeform Friday, God only knows what's going to happen, including I don't know if David is going to show up. He's on the road driving. He's hoping he can make it. Barnes will get here when Barnes gets here.
There's a guy who does a live stream just buying a hamburger at McDonald's. Can't make it to Freeform Friday because he's on the road. It's really outrageous.
Yeah, well, you know, he's got his family. So
I think he did a live stream from a public toilet to show how the coins went into the thing one time.
Okay. Well, that should be interesting. Well, I mean, he's discovering all kinds of Americanism, so who knows? Right. But you know what? We did bring some material here in the theme of it. So we can always riff and talk about whatever's going on. So Hiroshima Day, always a fun, light topic. It's Friday, got to have fun. So what could be more fun, more entertaining than Hiroshima?
Wow, look at that. That's true. Yeah, I mean, I guess August 9th, Nagasaki Day, which is the next holiday. We did pass out leaflets. I mean, we did send. I think we dropped leaflets on them saying there was going to be a big bomb. But you know, where are you going to go?
Oh, you said Nagasaki Day. Here you go.
That's the 9th. That's 3 days from now. Yeah, that'll be August 9th. Yeah, this show will cover both Hiroshima and Nagasaki Day. Yeah. I recommend the book Hiroshima by John Hershey, by the way, which is the definitive book on the subject at the time.
But then again, we of course have the Bikini Atoll. That was our own.
Oh, that was good. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, those are always fun to watch. I don't know if you've seen some of the footage of it. But, I see the soldiers. They're like in this little rickety shelter, and they're kind of like, yeah, whatever. And all of them drop dead of cancer in like 10 years. After
well, it's funny because, like, in the backstory of this thing is really fascinating because you had these two German physicists, Strassmann and Otto Hahn, who I think in 1938 are the first to actually crack the uranium atom. They split the uranium atom for the first time. I don't know if they won the Nobel Prize or whatever, but this scared the living hell out of Jewish scientists who had fled the Nazis in 1935, 36, 37, 38, including Albert Einstein, who, along with Szilard, another brilliant scientist, wrote a letter to FDR saying, we have to do something because the Nazis, if they've cracked this atom, they are inches away from making an atomic bomb. This is the letter they wrote out of fear. And Einstein later wrote that he regretted ever doing it and that it was the biggest mistake of his life because of the human casualties that the work caused. That's Einstein. But the whole thing starts with Einstein in New York. And he writes a letter with Szilard. It comes to him, actually, and convinces the two of them to write the letter, which leads to the Manhattan Project. And, leads to Leslie Groves, which leads to Los Alamos, which leads to Oppenheimer, which leads to them getting Enrico Fermi and everybody else on board to do the biggest scientific experiment construction project in the history of the world. I mean, they're literally making an A-bomb from scratch, and it didn't go well originally.
No, and the scale of the project, too, in secret, which is amazing. We may be talking about that here in a few minutes. It is an interesting irony, though, that the same Nazi hatred of people is what drove the scientists to us to where we could technically defeat them. So, I mean, they literally cut off their nose to spite their face.
Right. Now, eventually they give up. Don't forget, the Nazis give up, I think, in 1942, 43, about constructing the A-bomb because they put their efforts into V-2 rockets. So they diverted from that. We didn't know that at the time. But they changed their plan to make V1 and V2 rockets with a guy named Werner von Braun, who would end up running NASA a couple of years later, as Nazis do. But that's a project, Operation Paperclip. That's good for another day. But I mean, they well, put it this way: they had a lot of success with V1 and V2 rockets hitting London, right?
Yeah, I mean,
they couldn't use the A-bomb. If they had one A-bomb, like, what would the Nazis do with an A-bomb? One A-bomb. I mean, we only had two. What did we do? I mean, we used it at the end of the war, but what would the Nazis do? If they hit London with it, okay, now what? You're still fighting a war. It's not going to end everything.
Well, and there's a lot of interesting things. I mean, their technology was better in many, many places. Like, I think it was the Panzers. They talked about how one Panzer was the equivalent of about 5 of our tanks, except we are sending 10.
Right.
And so it was just a matter of, like, yes, they had better equipment, but we just overwhelmed them.
Well, it's the same thing with the Japanese. I mean, we made 100,000 planes a year in 1943, and the Japanese made 70,000 the whole war. I mean, 1 year we made more than they made the entire year. Same with battleships. I mean, aircraft carriers. I mean, the ratio was insane. It was 100 to 25 that we put into the ocean, 100 aircraft carriers to their 25 to launch our planes. I mean, eventually because of our industrial might, it's impossible to defeat, just like Russia and Ukraine. I mean, it's the same thing. Like somebody smart, I think it was Scott Ritter or somebody smarter than me said, it's like the United States invading Mexico and everyone saying Mexico is going to win. We just got to hang on. That's the lopsidedness of what's going on in that battle. And it was true for the Japanese and versus us. Over time, putting all those aircraft carriers and putting all those planes in the air, it's impossible for them to survive.
Well, we had that here in the Civil War.
Yep, that's right.
The North overwhelmed the South ultimately with more bodies, more technology. They would just keep producing, and then they cut off supplies. And again, here the Confederates won most of the battles on the way.
That's right.
So
I mean, emotion can only take you so far. You know, if with the Ukrainians, if they're emotional about it, so what? Eventually, you're just going to get worn down in the meat grinder, right, Eric?
yeah, I mean, but then there's the flip side, because if the emotion is deep enough and hard enough, like, let's say Vietnam, because they were overwhelmed and outgunned in every single way, they never gave up. They would always just keep coming. They'd hide everywhere. And maybe because it's their own land. So that's a hard call. Now with Russia and Ukraine or whatever, it's more difficult because they both consider it their own land. So the emotions are pretty high, I'd say, almost on both sides. So I don't really know.
Right. But the thing with Vietnam and also with Iraq and Afghanistan, these were wars of occupation. These were not battles. Tell me the biggest battle of Vietnam. There is none. You know what I mean? How does this guy get involved in this? Okay, we got to weave him into the story now. We're talking about the big battles of Vietnam, how these were wars of occupation, Robert, as opposed to invasion type wars. Like, there's no landing at Normandy and Saigon. You know what I mean? There's the Gulf of Tonkin, send in troops incrementally, the men having to go out to find the battle, right? You had to go out into the bush. The same thing with Afghanistan. These are occupying wars. They're not really wars. They're occupations, right?
Yeah, and in the sense, you don't also have battles like out on the battlefield, like the old European style, et cetera.
Right.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's it's kind of like what the British were trying to fight against the Americans, when the Americans kind of helped invent a lot of those ideas of warfare. I mean, the Brits would be walking in their little thing, and they'd all be organized in little red uniforms, and then we would ambush them. And we learned that from the Indian tribes, ambush them and get out, ambush them and get out. Wouldn't meet them on the battlefield like the old school wars used to.
Better guns too. We had better long range guns, so we would hide back and then just snipe them.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly.
Right, but the Ukraine thing is a real war.
Yeah. It is.
That's why I brought it up. I mean, because the Ukraine-Russia thing is a real battle.
Well, it's very much like it's a deep battle policy was invented by a Russian general after the disaster of World War I. And his point was that warfare had changed, and that now warfare was going to be about logistics and supply chains as much as it was going to be about battle on the battlefield. So it became about how do you sustain your own supply chains and how do you break the other ones. And the idea of deep battle, you would go into their deep position and cut them off. And so, like, before the Russia-Ukraine war started, I was telling people, if you study deep battle policy, you'll understand part of that is what they call it's the Russian version of a little masquerade, which is that they will never tell you fully what they're doing in military strategy. They will do feints at some level. So when they came in at 4 different levels, it's like they're not thinking they're going to conquer Ukraine in 72 hours. Milley was just either an idiot or lying to the press about that. They were shackling Ukrainian troops, deceiving Ukrainian troops and their NATO commanders. And while they came in clean in the south and nobody stopped them, and then what they did is they secured their whole chain coming in from Crimea through Russia. They now had not only a land bridge between the two, but now they could provide resupplies of troops, resupply of machinery, resupply of weaponry. They had no problems, while they had greatly interfered and impaired the Ukrainian ability to easily resupply, easily provide troops, easily provide backup, and the rest. And that's sort of classic deep battle policy. But there was a change that was implemented by the Soviets in World War II. The Germans did a version of it, but it was different. The Germans were a little bit focused on the blitzkrieg effect of trying to break through the line at a certain point and then take everybody out. But encirclements were a big part of that. And if you knew that background, you could anticipate what the Ukrainian conflict would look like. You could also know, going to the Vietnam and Afghanistan example, that Russia was extremely unlikely to go into unfriendly areas. That they have only militarily tried to occupy areas that are overwhelmingly pro-Russian. They have not tried to go, and Colonel Doug McGregor, who had a good interview with Jackson Hinkle, really broke it down well. They're only going to go where they have support. They know that trying to do urban warfare in a place where the local population is overwhelmingly against you is asking for trouble. Putin kind of reversed that equation in Chechnya. He inherited the first Chechen war, became the second Chechen war. He realized old school Russian military tactics weren't working. They tried to go in and occupy the capital, and it backfired on him. And he's like, no, we're going to find allies within Chechnya, and we're going to ostracize the adversary so that we're not occupying hostile territory. And that's why now there's a bunch of Chechen fighters fighting for Russia in Ukraine.
Right. I mean, you can make the analogy that these are their Navajo wind talkers, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and these guys are fierce too. Uber macho. Well, it's actually old East Tennessee culture. That's how I used to describe Chechnya. The Chechens. I mean, it's the reason why Stalin tried to disperse them to the wind. They always said only a person from the Caucasus could take out someone from the Caucasus.
Looks like a jury verdict's back.
All right, so 4.5 million. Oh, they did issue a crazy, but none of that matters.
Right.
So them issuing. So it says 45 million or so. So instead of the 145 million, they issued 45 million. It looks like that doesn't matter. It's reduced to under Texas law. It's reduced to 750,000 apiece. So the max it's capped at 1.5. So that's purely symbolism and purely for the media to say a bunch of stuff. That's about it. It's a Pyrrhic victory for the plaintiffs. It's a headline. It means nothing beyond that. And that's by the way, he wasn't allowed to defend himself in punitive damages. They made ludicrous claims about the value of his company. It says can you imagine a media company that is predicated upon talent that isn't contractually obligated to that media company being valued at $300 million? I mean, that it's ridiculous.
Well, my question for you is, does this negate now Sullivan versus New York Times?
Well, the reason why they needed a crazy verdict out of the compensatory damages side is because only that's the only one that's not capped. And so now what will happen is that all that verdict will be reduced to 1.5 or give or take. And so then the total verdict is like 5.7 million. That's bondable in Texas. And as long as he got a bondable verdict in Texas, then that takes it up to gives a chance for the Texas Supreme Court to finally to make the ruling that two of the justices wanted to make based on their vote. They wanted to take the case prior to trial, way back when I was involved in the case.
Right.
And because it is the theory of the case would make anybody suable for saying anything that anybody disagrees with that they're offended by, for the most part, if you look at the legal theory behind the suit.
I have a question on this. Are his lawyers potentially liable, or their liability insurance potentially liable for the quote Perry Mason moment? I don't know.
Yeah, no, because there's several different things. One is that they did two things. Only a client can waive attorney-client privilege, so an attorney can't waive it. So the January 6th committee and anyone else who gets a hold of any of these communications that are privileged are also in violation of the privilege. They can't use it, and it contaminates any investigation they could ever try to do. So if anything, it actually hurts any potential parallel case, not helps it. They didn't have perjury anyway. I mean, if they'd had perjury, they would have brought up what was perjury. They didn't have it. And instead, they wanted to say, I hereby find you've committed perjury. But then, of course, they produced no proof of it. The only text they had was a text that simply compared COVID to Sandy Hook. It wasn't a Sandy Hook text. So,
really?
Yeah. So, it had a phrase, the phrase Sandy Hook in it, but it had nothing to do with Sandy Hook. And it was after the suit had been filed. So none of it has anything to do with the events at issue. Anyway, so it wasn't subject to the original discovery, part one. And again, he'd been defaulted. What are they going to do? Default him again? It's like Al-Zahari. How many times can you kill the guy? And then the other problem with it is they were saying, we see emails on here. I know Alex Jones. Everybody who knows Alex Jones knows he never uses email.
Everybody.
So there may be an email account that somebody else uses that has some connection of his name on it. That's not his email. He doesn't use it. Everybody knows he doesn't use it. So that was a crock too. And so, and there was no perjury. They weren't able to identify anything. And for the judge, for all of her yipping and yapping and issuing sanctions, she never found a basis to find him in contempt at all. So So it's the case was a rogue show trial. It was a joke of a trial at every level. They violated every right known to man. Anybody that defends the case, I'll never take seriously again. Period. Because you can hate Alex Jones, but you can't defend default judgments in the way they're issued. What I've challenged those people that say, "Hey, default judgment's okay." Find me one parallel example where anybody produced more than 1 million pages of documents and emails, sat for hundreds and hundreds of hours of depositions, that was denied completely any defense on the merits and denied completely any defense on punitive damages. You won't find it. It doesn't exist.
Didn't they try to do this with Trump a couple months ago, Robert, in New York, saying he didn't turn over the discovery that he didn't have?
Yeah, exactly. And they ultimately sort of backed off and capitulated on it.
Yeah, I know. Right. I mean,
but
what is the difference between Alex Jones and Julian Assange? I'm not really sure, other than one's been in prison, the other one's still free. I mean, they both have been tarred with this asshole brush. When you get tarred with the asshole brush, apparently your free speech goes out the window.
Yeah, well, I mean, exactly. I mean, and the goal is the script part of this case. They played me talking about the case to the jury, which was I
wish they would have had us talking about it. It would have been great.
Yeah, exactly. It was just insane at multiple levels. None of that is admissible. The Jones's comments about the jurors, that's not admissible. I mean, the judge just said, "Is there anything that will look bad for Jones for the future documentary that she was having made?" Authorized in the courtroom. Wow. 3 movie cameras, 1 movie camera staring down the jury, 3 movie cameras set up, a whole movie crew inside it. It felt like you were walking on set.
Right.
And the judge was scripting the case so that only one side could be presented. And the goal is to have the documentary made a year or 2 from now.
Alex Gibney will be called.
It's kind of like the Bolden case in the sense that the goal was to script a narrative so that everybody would believe a fake narrative a year from now. Right. And the fake narrative was supposed to be Alex Jones is terrible, horrible. He lied about a bunch of people. A jury found that and found a big verdict. And now he's had to be shut off the air and so you should never listen to anything else Alex Jones ever said. You should not listen to him in the future because of this case. And the only place it worked was conservative type opinion, conventional opinion.
Right.
In that all the conservatives, take that fake DUI guy, Hack, who was the loser who tried to stage events during the Johnny Depp trial, tried to pretend he was a victim of legal bites when the guy's just a scam artist, grifter tattooed on his forehead. He goes out and grandstands and attacks Alex Jones, right? Okay. Leave it to a DUI lawyer to do that. And again, there's some decent DUI lawyers out there, but they're like plaintiffs' lawyers. They're in the minority. Like all lawyers are in the minority.
Another question on that. And because I was confused by this, and maybe you can put light on it. From what I understood, you could watch the broadcast, but you couldn't rebroadcast it. But somehow Law and Order got an exception to it. And I'm bringing this up deliberately because people were debating it. And were we trying to prevent Rekieta from covering it live and other people? What was going down with all that?
So the court said the people that she had authorized could rebroadcast or republish it. And she only authorized Law and Crime and a few other local, and it was politically favorable ones. She looked right at Alex Jones and says, "You don't have the authority to rebroadcast." Can you imagine? Wow. You can't even rebroadcast your own trial to your own audience.
Wow.
That now, in my view, that violates the public access to the right to a trial by jury. She was taking down the live feed.
She gave the one that does the copyright claims on anybody else who does it.
Exactly. And someone that she knew would be reliable to spin it in the direction she wants. Because again, this is all about this documentary, because it's like, why are we having a trial at all when you've just defaulted him on everything, number one, and you won't allow him to defend himself? Number two, why are we having a trial on damages that appears to have nothing to do with damages? 90% of the evidence that came in had nothing to do with damages.
Who is the film company that she authorized, Robert?
It's the Leaving Neverland folks.
Okay.
The same people that ran a hit job and a smear campaign on Michael Jackson that they only had the guts to run because he's dead. They would have never run that hit piece, that smear campaign, if he was alive. So,
wasn't Oprah involved initially and then she bailed out?
I don't know.
No, she was involved with Martin Bashir. I had the lawyer on that got that one shut down. Michael
Right,
Jackson's
but there
lawyer.
was one that
I think that was
I thought
Oprah's.
she was a producer on the one that ended up on HBO, and
Could
she
be.
threw them under the bus at the end. I have to look it up. I don't remember that clearly.
Yeah, so I mean, it's what you have is everything about the case was a crock, but the goal is like you contrast it or compare it, say to this fits a historical pattern. What's ahistorical is the severity and the degree of insanity that was applied in the Alex Jones case, in that I think somebody did a math and it's like she sustained like 110 or so of the plaintiff's objections and only 8 or something of the defendant's objections. I mean, it's the kind of wild number. Tons of evidence for people that say, "Oh, he didn't participate in discovery." Well, where did they get all his financial information? Where did they get all his emails? Where did they get all his texts? Where did they get all of his deposition testimony? Where did they get all of his videos? They only allowed what the plaintiffs themselves called altered videos to be played. They played a 5-second clip for me. They wouldn't play the rest of the clip because they didn't want the jury to see the rest of the clip.
Could we expect the same type of show trial if Assange is brought here under the Espionage Act and put in trial on DC territory?
Well, it'll be federal Eastern. It'll probably be the Eastern District of Virginia where they do all the national security cases, and those courts are notorious for hiding evidence, doing sealed proceedings. They won't allow any cameras in there.
So then it'll be a star chamber versus a show trial.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
Oh, okay. Well, I want to get it right. I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, it's like you go back to you look at Bolden. In other words, why did they do all of that? It was to discredit him. It wasn't just.
Well, a lot of people are comparing the Secret Service then and now with the January 6th text messages, Robert.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And people who think that the secret, like some parts of the media, are trying to imply the Secret Service lost this stuff because of to help Trump. It's like, no, they deleted it the day as soon as Biden was in. Then they knew they would be politically protected for destroying it all and there's a reason why the January 6th committee was not eager to subpoena that information.
The Secret Service, when they were called before the House Assassinations Committee, just went in there and said, we destroyed everything. They literally told them to their face. They didn't even bother with this phony story of erased phones. They just said, go F yourself. We destroyed every single document.
Yeah, I mean, and by the way, an Allen charge is not supposed to be what that judge read.
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah, what the hell was that? What was that?
An Allen charge is just, hey, you need to go back in there and really work hard. That's what it is.
Right. For the people who don't know what Robert's talking about, in the middle of the first Bolden trial, the judge, Perry, said the jury was deadlocked 11-1. And he said he's obviously guilty on counts 1, 2, and 3. Go back in there, and they still hung after that. And he said that was an Allen charge, and the appellate court upheld it, Robert.
Well, it sounds like a default judgment.
Yeah, it's very similar. The Abraham Bolden case, very similar to this. He was railroaded and, ended up being 3.5 years in prison.
Yeah. What the judge did was patently illicit. But what it does is, like I've told people, if you want an analogy to the Alex Jones trial, the closest you'll get is the Chicago 7 trial in contemporary time. But at least the Chicago 7 got to present part of their defense. Right. But for those that don't know, those guys were railroaded. What they were brilliant at is they realized the key flaw to the court, to the railroading of them, was the judge's bad temperament. Right. And they kept provoking it. So the world could see.
I think it could have been done in this case. People are far too placid in court. It absolutely, and you're in the middle of a kangaroo court. Like we say, I mean, I'm not going into the ovens quietly. You know what I mean?
Right.
Just don't sit there and participate with their operation. I find this outrageous that you obey the sanctity of the court, listening to this fat broad up on the stand who's obviously a clown telling you how to behave in an effing courtroom when it's a show trial with a bunch of her home video cameras in there. I mean, somebody's got to, burn this house to the ground emotionally.
I'm sure if Abby Hoffman had been in there, I'm sure the judge would have been thrown him to jail every other hour.
Right.
People forget William Kunstler found in contempt 13 times. In that case.
I said this the other day. Where is the William Kunstler of the right? I mean, there is a vacuum here. I don't know who that lawyer was that Alex Jones had, or any of these people. They seem to get lawyers that are so placid, Robert, so well behaved. It's outrageous.
Well, it's because that's why when I was representing him for a period of time, they came after me obsessively And they planted smear stories and a bunch of press. They were trying to get a Texas publication to be convinced that I had plotted the assassination of the lead plaintiff's lawyer or was trying to get him killed. I mean, it was one insane thing after the next insane thing after the next insane thing. And the only thing they had going for them was they had a couple of courts in their pockets.
Right.
They had the Austin courts were not going to be independent. They were overtly partisan from day one. And that included in Texas, they have a screwed up system where the courts of appeals are also from Austin. So your only shot at any kind of impartial apolitical justice is at the Texas Supreme Court. And in Connecticut, they're all partial. Connecticut had just railroaded Remington in that $77 million settlement by lying about federal law. Federal law is clear. You can't sue a gun manufacturer for the misuse of the gun. Yet they allowed it. U.S. Supreme Court sat on it rather than taking the case, probably thinking they could resolve it later on. And in the interim, insurance companies weren't willing to take the risk, so they wrote a big check. And it's partially because what's still true is Sandy Hook. Politicians lied, so kids died. And they've been busy covering that up for a decade. That there was basic safety techniques they could have utilized that they didn't, including the ability to lock the doors from the inside, that likely would have saved a bunch of kids' lives. They can't let that come out because that would embarrass and humiliate a bunch of politicians. Also, it wouldn't allow them to blame the gun. And the reality is, what disincentive is there for gun control politicians to stop school shootings? It's their number one promotional technique right now. It's the number one way they get gun control right now. And that's the problem. We can't create those distorted disincentives, but instead they want to blame Alex Jones. And their goal is to make it illegal to have a quote unquote conspiracy theory, to have a theory against the government's narrative that offends and upsets somebody that's somehow within the zone of danger. I call it legalized safe spaces. That's the legal premise of it. If the Texas Supreme Court ever takes the case, they're going to reverse it, throw it all out.
Right.
The only question is whatever happens in Connecticut. The business is filed for bankruptcy, so that will go through a whole bankruptcy process, and we'll see. They clearly what they wanted was a big compensatory damages verdict, and they didn't even with a rigged case, they couldn't
get it. Yeah.
They couldn't get the ending to the script that they wanted.
Right. It's so funny because I was thinking, why isn't this nut making them wear masks in the court? Because she's that kind of a nut. And then I realized it's for the documentary.
Yeah, exactly.
That bastard wants to be seen on camera.
Everything was being made for that. Because why is she allowing clearly irrelevant evidence that would have related to the merits but doesn't relate to damages into the case? And then when I came into the courtroom and saw that there's one camera staring at the jury the entire time, I would have objected to that.
Wow.
It's literally right on the head of the jury box. It's like this looking right now.
At some point, you got to get up and walk out. You got to say this is enough is enough.
Yeah, you have to expose it for what it is.
Papers and get the fuck out of there.
Yeah,
Something's got to give. You can't participate in your own demise in these political show trials.
Yeah, and I think that's the difficulty people face that are part of it. One is not enough people know the broader, longer history of how people have exposed corrupt court processes from within. By willing to, like Kunstler, he was willing to take the 13 contempt charges.
Right.
Knowing that the most likely impact of that would be that the Court of Appeals would realize this has made us all look like a joke. We got to reverse everything, which is what happened. But knowing there was a risk, he would do 7-10 years in federal prison.
I know. It takes balls. It takes a lot of balls.
Yeah. But the other part is that there's a lot of people who believe that if you play nice, they'll treat you nice. And I've always said
that ship has sailed. That ain't happening anymore, bro.
No. I've always said the king doesn't respect you coming and bowing before him. The king only respects you coming up and kicking him in the nads.
Right.
That's the way the system works. The power only respects a sort of righteous response. And that's why it has to keep. But all these people now, what do you think about Alex Berenson? Because what would you say about a guy?
He's trying to win his way back.
I know that's part of it. But think about how much this might fit into some past shows you guys have done. Alex Berenson.
His career change?
Yes. So he's a Yale grad. In fact, he was there when I was there. I didn't know he was there when I was there. A Yale grad, went to preps. He went Horace Mann or whatever, New York. Yes, exactly.
Horace Mann.
Yes. And so he goes and works briefly for one little paper. Then he works for Jim Cramer, the notoriously wrong Wall Street guy. Then he gets to the New York Times. He starts to cover the Iraqi war. And somehow that leads him into writing novels.
Right.
of CIA spies.
By the way, I've
minute.
read the novel, so I can add a little more color that you may be missing. Do you know who the character is? The character is a CIA agent who converted to Islam.
No.
Of course.
Coincidentally, I think we did a show on somebody in the CIA who really liked Islam and conversion and communism.
Brennan.
And
there was rumors that
there's a little bit of an overlap. I don't know. I
mean, how much does it fit? And like, especially if Robert Malone called him CIA, didn't call him CIA, he called him controlled opposition.
Right.
And for those people that don't know, what often happens, it's how I describe Dominion, the theory about Dominion, which is and what you guys have been describing in the JFK assassination and other examples of this. If you know there's going to be opposition, you try to control it. And the way you would do so is have somebody that is with the opposition on one point and thus gain a lot of credibility with them. And then be against be with the establishment or the institutional narrative, whatever, on a bunch of other points. That's one way you can do a controlled narrative. The other way you can do it is by injecting their own conspiracy theories. And then, by the way, this is really Robert Kennedy Jr.'s thesis in his book, American Values, is that he says most of what people think they know about my grandfather, father, and uncle are actually CIA planted stories.
Absolutely.
And he goes, almost all this about, he goes, really even Chicago and other aspects, he goes, these have CIA fingerprints. A lot of these stories didn't even exist until after the assassination of my father and my uncle. He goes, that's who's been planning them. That's who's been running them. But you make it sound like, hey, I'm really against the deep state by telling you about these bad things about the Kennedy family, when actually they're deep state planted conspiracy theories themselves.
Right. Like we said in the CIA and family episode, which you people might want to take a look at. We're going to do another episode, CIA and the art world, on Tuesday. It'll be the 4th in the series. But in the CIA and family, I don't care if your father was in the CIA, if you run a delicatessen in Brooklyn, right? I don't care about that. But like Michael Schellenberger, a guy who is another guy like this Berenson, Michael Schellenberger's father was Shelley Schellenberger, who was a
governor candidate, Michael Schellenberger.
Yeah, that's right. Who an environmentalist. Then he's not an environmentalist, Robert. Then he's for nuclear power. Then he's against the homeless. And all of a sudden, he's a candidate for governor of the state of California, which undermined the recall of Gavin Newsom because he pulled votes from people who were against Newsom. If you follow the controlled opposition thing you were talking about, Robert.
Oh, yeah, exactly. And so, you look at Alex Berenson, has a very peculiar history, suddenly shows up saying, hey, I'm against lockdowns, I'm against vaccine mandates, I'm against mask mandates. And he does a lot of good research and writing, persuades tons of people. Fox puts him on.
Tucker had him on a lot.
Exactly. And then what does he start doing with that platform? He starts attacking Robert Malone, attacking Pierre Corey, attacking people promoting ivermectin, attacking people challenging the vaccine on other grounds.
Which is very weird. It's like he's on this side, but he starts to eat up the people who are.
The first one was the Malone attack, I think, right?
Yes. And he ambushed him live on TV.
Yes,
on Fox News.
Yes.
Then he starts promoting aggressively. He's very dismissive of the election challenges. Then he starts promoting aggressively the Ukraine war, saying some of the dumbest stuff on the planet. I mean, he actually wrote, I think he's taken it down because I was ragging him about it. He wrote a piece in March saying China's going to come out against Russia and show Russia what. Just completely. I mean, everything he was saying was wrong. And it's like basically he manages to repeat CIA talking points on almost every issue other than the lockdowns, which would fit the pattern of someone who's controlled opposition. And then you have this very weird history where he suddenly goes from being a reporter for just a few years in Iraq, connected to spooks with some of the CIA as his sources. And then all of a sudden he's got a nice publishing deal where he can go independent, where all he does is write CIA fan fiction. It's like there's something odd about this guy. And then he was obsessed with going after Alex Jones. Right. In ways that were just, counterlogical, not even within his own interest.
Especially with his own situation on Twitter, which is kind of odd. It's like, well, wait a minute. You were thrown off of Twitter. Wouldn't you have some modicum of sympathy? You might hate the guy personally, but he got thrown off of all platforms. You're thrown off of a platform. I would just think, wouldn't you see a little bit of commonality there?
Camaraderie, at least.
Yeah, it's odd. Yeah,
it fits certain patterns. But, my first ever whistleblower case was actually a whistleblower, Ernie Oliver, against Little Debbie. Speaking of the Little Debbie war. So in fact, he designed a website speaking of defamation, trying to get Little Debbie to sue him.
There she is.
And he turned Little Debbie into Skull and Bones.
No.
And like it would like red flashing things, and how Little Debbie, it was like Little Debbie poisonous, whatever, that kind of thing.
No.
And because he wanted them to sue him because he had stumbled into a massive scandal. I was actually had just graduated law school, was working for a local street lawyer in Chattanooga. And he came in and, he'd run, nobody would represent him. Nobody would fight for him.
Wait, what did he uncover? What was the whistleblower thing?
So what happened is, he'd actually been a whistleblower in the 70s exposing crime labs in Michigan.
Right.
He'd made John Engler partially famous all the way back in the day. He exposed how they were contaminating the process for evidence long before anybody figured all that out about 30 years later about state crime labs being a joke. Before the federal, the FBI crime lab that can't remember where the bullet came from, did it come from this person or that person, or, it's just a fake bullet anyway. So who cares who signed it when, right?
Right.
But so he goes down to Chattanooga. He's teaching at Chattanooga State, which is his favorite thing. The guy looks like Jerry Lee Lewis out of Nutty Professor, very eclectic guy. His hair's kind of disheveled, that kind of thing. And he works as a consultant for a local company. The local company, he says, hey, look, there's a pollution problem here at the local landfill, what you guys are doing, because he actually took his job seriously. Didn't understand that environmental consultant means cover up and facilitate corruption and pollution, not actually expose it to your boss. But, Ernie is as a straight shooter. So he gets fired from that, and he gets mad, and he wants to do something about it. Not long thereafter, he suddenly gets fired from his Chattanooga State job. Uh-huh. And they start waging war on him in a bunch of different ways. It would set him on basically a 10-year path of trying to figure it out. What he had accidentally uncovered, in a sense he didn't intend to, was that what they were polluting at the local Chattanooga landfill, that there was mercury and other items there that were made way too high doses. It was going into what he found out was it was going into the water supply, being used by a critical local factory there nearby in Collegedale and elsewhere, McKee Bakery, which is the making of Little Debbie's.
Oh.
And it turned out they are a big contributor to certain people, that they were likely behind it. And then he dug in even further, found out that our Chattanooga State president, that every community college president that everybody was praising and putting a local TV show on, all the rest, turned out he was a mobbed up guy from Chicago.
What?
And not only that, he stumbled across the guy's divorce rate. He found it because, it's Ernie. So he's that kind of guy. He gets his divorce records, and maybe the court accidentally gave it to him, whatever. But it turned out that these court records exposed even more scandals, because it turned out the reason why this guy had gotten divorced was that his wife, the Chattanooga State Community College president, his wife had gone in to their bank to check their security deposit box.
Right.
What she didn't know is that he had two. What the bank didn't know is they gave her the key to the wrong one.
Oh.
And she opens up that one and she finds pictures of him with her best friend.
No.
So Jesus. Not only that, like money issues and corruption issues and all the rest, a lot of this is buried in a divorce file the local press had never covered. Ernie finds it out and starts blasting it all around town. He finds out that the local state senator's daughter used to be in soft porn movies.
What?
And it was like, and the local state senator was part of an old political corrupt machine, and that he was partially part of a bribery thing, leads to a criminal investigation of that guy. But so he had this massive tentacular conspiracy that when you first hear it, I was thinking, all right, okay, I've heard some version of this before. Right. Turned out everything he said was true. It was all accurate. It was all, and his way of trying to get back at Mercury, he was like, I can prove it to the McKee Bakery people. He had a corrupt judge handle his case. It was the same judge I would have problems with a year or so later because he was falling asleep on the bench.
That's bad.
He fell asleep on the bench during a bench trial over an abuse case. And he had the little kid who had described terrible abuse have to go back to the parent who was abusing him because he'd fallen asleep during all the kid's evidence. I was enraged, and the lawyer, I wasn't at the trial for that case. The other lawyer that was said, well-respected, well-regarded lawyer, told me, if you say a word, every judge in town is going to hate you. And it's why I tell people, be careful of local lawyers.
Yeah.
That, and it's why I'm not a local lawyer. I practice everywhere. I don't practice where I live.
Right.
And the reason for that is that day. Because he's
like, what you eat, I guess. I don't know.
You can't expose the local corruption in the local legal community.
Right. If you're part of the machine.
Exactly.
If you're near the machine, Robert, even near the machine.
You got to be a mercenary. You can't be part of the palace guard.
How does this lead us into Estes Kefauver? I just want to know.
So Kefauver was a Chattanooga congressman. He was from Chattanooga.
Right.
He wanted to be president.
How many times did he run for president, Robert?
Yeah, multiple times.
Right.
By the way, he got more votes. I think it was 1952. He got more votes in their limited primaries.
There's the hat. I had the same hat. Everybody had that hat, Robert.
Yeah, that's a Tennessee coon hat. That's that's a Davy Crockett Tennessee raccoon hat.
I wore that hat as a kid too.
Oh yeah, well I think because Davy Crockett was a popular show back then. If I recall right, and so the little hat was popular.
Davy Crockett.
That's exactly right.
Wild frontier. Now apparently went after Betty Page too. That's where I draw the line, Robert.
Well, yeah, I mean, even Truman hated him. A bunch of people hated him because what Kefauver didn't realize, he thought, I'm going to conscientiously go after all these rackets. I'm going to make myself famous. I'm going to be the next president. The problem was he kept doing rackets hearings that kept exposing Democratic Party tied corruption.
Right.
And he didn't realize that's what he kept stumbling into. And so consequently,
here's some of his friends.
Yeah, exactly. So he was going after. He fully did not appreciate at all what he was. And if you knew where he was from in Chattanooga and you knew how he grew up, you could understand why he was completely idealistic and naive about it. And the reason why the Kefauver Rackets committees finally got shut down, they only did like the horse wire, the act that led to the limitation on sports betting until the Supreme Court struck down a version of that law. Was and by the way, the Biden administration is shutting down political betting in America. They're making predict it will probably be the last time they can use bets or this year. You won't be able to trade there apparently.
Here's a guy who went after Frank Costello in the Rackets committee.
Now Frank was an impressive guy. Frank was a smarter gangster.
Yeah, he was the top of the heap.
When he ran the show, less trouble occurred.
Right.
The other guys.
Frank Costellos. We need more Frank Costellos.
Yeah, I mean that's the part of Hoover that may have been right. In the sense that Hoover's belief was organized crime is better than disorganized crime.
Right. Yeah, there's some logic to that. Bobby disagreed, but...
Well, yeah, and that's because, especially during the early, he was so idealistic. It is, like, when you go back and look and you start to realize a lot of the conspiracy theories about the Kennedys don't add up when you realize how utterly idealistic both John and Bobby were. That if they were corrupt, they wouldn't have been that idealistic. They wouldn't have been as naive. They were ruthless politically.
Right.
But they showed striking naivete, and the way Trump did too.
When people don't need the money like Trump and them, you have to go after the character because the money corruption angle doesn't work, Robert.
Exactly. Right? And there are all the stories about John and his personal life, but that was, as you know, that was commonplace. And at that time, now what's interesting is how it might all tie into Watergate,
right?
Because the aspect of that, in the sense of that really what was happening was a bunch of the secretaries on the Hill, which incidentally relates to my whistleblower story in Chattanooga. The state senator he exposed had 7 secretaries on his staff, and none of them worked in the office. So, it was that kind of deal. Which is what people understand, that the Hill in the in the 50s, 60s, even into the 70s, you had a bunch of high call girl escorts working inside as secretaries in a bunch of positions on the Hill.
Bobby Baker had a whole motel outside of D.C. with secretaries in each room.
Exactly.
That's what Bobby Baker's thing was. LBJ's little LBJ, it was called.
Well, Ukraine understands this. That's why they put their mistress. It came out with a 25-year-old hot blonde model appointed to high-ranking position in Ukraine.
She was a minister of information.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, of course, you got to put your mistress somewhere.
Ukraine is so corrupt. It's thrilling, to paraphrase Lenny Bruce about Chicago. It's just so brazen. Even Amnesty International turned against them now, saying that they were using civilians as human targets. Zelensky's now fighting with Amnesty International. I mean,
well,
wow.
he had to fire his own prosecutor. He had to fire, sex workers. Yeah, that's exactly what a lot of them were. I mean,
LBJ had 7 of them right in the office.
Arguably, that's what Watergate was about, because John Dean's fiance was one of them.
Oh, that's
right. And remember, that led to all those, speaking of defamation, high-profile suits. He tried to bring a bunch. He ultimately wasn't successful in much of any of them. And
Maureen Dean, right?
Exactly. And apparently, photos of her were in that, because they never explained, why did Nixon care about going back in there to open up certain desk drawers? What exactly was he looking for?
Wow.
And it made sense that what came out. Remember, they're almost all spooks. They're all guys that show up in your Kennedy stories.
Well, the plumbers unit had a purpose. I mean, when Arthur Bremer shot George Wallace in the stomach, Nixon, who was not, beneath dirty tricks, had the plumbers unit with G. Gordon Liddy go to his apartment and put McGovern literature in the living room. I mean, that takes some creativity.
What's fascinating is the idea that Nixon thought he could control and cabin the deep state by co-opting some of its key complicit parties. And I don't think what he didn't realize is that they were actually compromising him along the way.
I mean, the Bay of Pigs stuff that he had was supposedly code word for the JFK assassination. He just lumped it all in the Bay of Pigs.
And that's where he's trying to push back.
Right.
And it was only because he was wanting to de-Hooverize the FBI finally. That's where I remember I had that conversation, by the way, with Ben Bradley at the Washington Post Office in the early 1990s.
Right.
Where when he was still alive, still the editor-in-chief there. And it was a Yale political union thing. That's why he was willing to. It's amazing. Say Yale.
Oh, it's amazing that Bradley goes over to the house of Mary Meyer after she's killed and runs into James Angleton, who's looking for her diary. And he's the brother-in-law. He's going, "Can I help you?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm looking for her diary in case there's stuff in there for Cordmeyer, her ex-husband at that point." So, yeah, they're strange bedfellows.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, and so Bradley's there, and he's talking about, everybody's asking, who's really Deep Throat and all the rest. He's not going to answer, of course. But I said, what if Deep Throat isn't some honest, honorable whistleblower, but the real reason you guys are covering for him is because he's a high-ranking intelligence or law enforcement officer that had corrupt intentions all along. And all Bradley did was smile and didn't answer. Wow. And of course, then it turns out that's exactly who it was.
Felt.
It's Mark Felt, who was the guy who ran COINTELPRO in America. That was the great Deep Throat. Bob Woodward was just a Yale connection. All these CIA spooks. I mean,
that's why we mentioned Daniel Groth the other day in the episode about Bolden, because Daniel Groth was babysitting Thomas Arthur Valley, and he arrests him an hour and a half after the JFK parade was canceled, when JFK was canceled from coming to Chicago. And then Daniel Groth is involved in the execution of a certain Black Panther in Chicago a little while after that.
No doubt. I mean, and what's interesting about Fred Hampton, by the way, is he was one of the most authentic populist Black Panthers.
Right.
He was not like Huey P. Newton, who, by the way, was named after Huey P. Long, great governor, great state of Louisiana, great populist. That gives you an idea for the legacy of Long, that the founder of the Black Panthers was so named. But the Crips. I think the Crips are like the Committee for Revolution and whatever. I'll give them credit. It was all the old gangs, and they're like, "Oh man, we just rename ourselves political, and now we can get away with our various extortion and embezzlement and blackmail and criminal
SLA, Robert. I mean, they were running a chiropractor office in Harlem, and then they got into cocaine, and they were into, all kinds of things, and eventually bank robbery and Patty Hearst, Yep.
Oh, exactly. I mean, it was just natural sort of criminality.
There's a CIA edge tied into that, though, by the way.
Oh, yes.
All of these have them. Yeah, all of them have been infiltrated. They're all infiltrated by, guys that they've got their thumb on. There's not that many of them because they have to be Black, obviously.
Well, I mean, it's been a constant effort. How do you discredit outsiders, challengers, dissidents, which is probably the common theme of today's freeform, is that you create terror movements that are associated with the political dissidents of some type. You tar and feather them in some way. You either scandalize them with bogus civil suits or criminal cases and rigged legal systems, or you actually try to create an organic indigenous terrorism movement. And like MOVE
in Philadelphia, let's say.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
Like aspects of Weather Underground.
Yeah.
I mean, people forget Weather Underground was supposed to go blow up a bunch of Army guys to start things off, and then they blew themselves up in New York,
Right.
and that sort of derailed their more ambitious aspirations. But what does all that activity do? What all that activity did is help discredit the causes they were associated with, damage the sustainability of those causes. And so then you have PatCon 1990. They pretend it doesn't exist for 20 years, where the FBI was creating fake militias in America, trying to inspire a militia movement that they could use to justify broader surveillance and disassociation of various critics on the
Don't
political
forget
right.
anthrax coming out of Fort Meade and being distributed by Bruce Hampful, whatever the guy, right? And
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then you have, I mean, comes out in Whitmer, the entrapment case.
Ah!
Turns out they created a fake militia again. And now we get whistleblower evidence that the FBI agents are being told to dummy up bogus domestic terrorism cases, label cases domestic extremist terrorism that aren't, create cases that don't exist yet.
That's why I mean, the DeSantis move yesterday to take this DA out of Tampa is what we have to do. You have to physically remove them from office. Let them fight their way back, sue us, whatever they got to do, but they've got to be physically removed. This guy McCabe, who is running the FBI now? This guy McCabe?
Ray.
Oh, Ray. Okay, this guy Ray has got to be removed. And it doesn't matter how you do it. I mean, obviously, you can't just go in there and get him. But look what DeSantis did. Look how he grew a pair of balls and took this guy out, saying he's violating the laws of the state of Florida by not enforcing them. There's nobody here to do that in California, so we recalled him. Gasson.
The people did.
The people have recalled, and the guy who's in charge of counting the signatures, who is a communist, said there will be no transparency allowed when I count the signatures in violation of all the sunshine laws of the wonderful state of California. He's decided that he alone will count the signatures to determine, which they will not do in any election, as you're well aware, Robert, count any signatures. And you wonder, why do we have signatures? Why do you have to sign the absentee ballot if nobody's going to count them?
Well, it's selective. I mean, Obama got elected on signatures.
Right.
So
right.
It depends.
He got into office. Exactly. I mean, the irony is, when I tell people what they did in 2020, I was like, they laid out the roadmap for what they did in 2020 in the New York Times in August of 2012, because they thought Romney was going to do what they themselves did in 2020. Right. And it was fact, they had all these experts saying, oh, absentee ballots, mail-in ballots, big problem, big fraud history there. Jimmy Carter admitted it. Tim Baker admitted it. All the findings, all the criminal cases in the past. All the experts, we got to be real careful about this. Obama himself said we got to have strict signature matches. Of course, Romney was too much of a wuss to ever try. He was just like his dad. His dad was a wuss. I mean, he came from a family of wusses. So it was no surprise that he actually never even did it. But they roadmapped it right then. I mean, all the election contests I was drafting for Trump, I would cite that article over and over and over and over. It's the same scam, just done in a different way. We saw unusual delays in Arizona in counting the ballots, unusual delays still in Washington in counting ballots. California takes months to count the ballots.
I don't think they ever came up with a final number in the recent election, the primary with the mayor's race. I don't even remember. And then the people go on about their lives, and there's never a result. They're still counting the ballots.
Yeah, it's extraordinary.
It's a brilliant idea. That's a never-ending election count.
Oh, exactly. We will keep counting until the right winner is declared.
Exactly. It's like I said to you, they've got dead voting lists. They've got these homes, these safe houses out in San Bernardino where they take all the absentee ballots and they parse them out for money to various candidates who need to buy. And you talk about all Democratic races here. This is all Democratic races, Democrats versus Democrats on every level in the state of California. And they buy absentee ballots and they outspend each other to buy enough ballots from these mob guys, Armenians, Russians, Ukrainians, who steal them all out of apartment buildings, take them to the safe house in San Bernardino, in case you don't know how it works out here, people. And then there's lists. You could buy 5,000 ballots, 10,000 ballots. You don't even know, how many you need. You have to have the money to buy the ballots to outdo the guy now. It's brilliant.
Well, and mail-in balloting is such a gift for the old voting. For the voting machines, for those kind of folks. Because like back when I was involved in Democratic politics in Tennessee, you had to pay walking around money to a bunch of people. And then these are people who basically guaranteed you X number of votes in this particular precinct.
Right.
And the way that happened is, they get paid 20 grand. They distribute, $50 a pop to a bunch of folks or other folks that they take care of. The old school political machine. Hey, here, and they give them a ticket and they say, here's who to vote for, and you go in.
Right.
The problem was you could never know whether they would actually do it.
Right.
Now,
right.
mail-in balloting, by golly,
mail-in balloting is the greatest gift they've ever had in their lives, and that's why they mandated it in so many places in violation of state legislatures, Robert, as you're well aware. And this beast has got to be put back in its cage. We can't have a situation like this ever again.
They've got to start. I mean, they got to get rid of the entire D.C. process. I mean, Trump wouldn't even be looking at trumped-up criminal charges, but for the fact that the District of Columbia could be the grand jury and the jury.
Right.
I mean, Fulton County. Some of these nitwits were yipping away on Twitter, saying, "Oh, I'm pretty sure they're going after Trump for RICO," and it's like, no, there's no RICO application at all, even in the nutty minds of the Fulton County prosecutors.
Right.
But they should get rid of the D.C. court system, get rid of there's no need for it. It's a federally created jurisdiction. It wasn't part of the original intention. Get rid of having state capitals having monopoly over a lot of these cases.
Get rid of the FBI was trending today on Twitter.
Why not? What is the deal?
Need?
It used to be just the Bureau of Investigation under the Justice Department.
Let's just take the case that Eric and I have been working on, the Baldwin case, right? This DA, this Soros DA in Santa Fe, is still waiting for the FBI report before she can move on charging or not charging Alec Baldwin. Well, how many centuries do we have to wait? We waited a year and a half for Las Vegas shooter to come back with a report saying he had no motive. We have no idea why he shot up so many people. Have a nice day.
And by the way, that sheriff is not going to be governor in Nevada, and he's the better choice, sadly.
Okay, well,
that shows you where Nevada is trending. I mean, I tell people at the moment that shooting happened, because I was in Vegas when it happened. I had friends that were down there. Nobody got shot, but I had friends that were down there. I had clients who had family that were at the concert.
Right.
That they didn't, they survived, thankfully. But I said right away, told people, we will never find out the truth about Las Vegas.
No.
Because this town cannot afford the idea that somebody targeted Las Vegas. So I said, what you're going to see is two things. One, there's going to be a complete cover-up, not necessarily because they're trying to cover up somebody else doing it or his motive. They're going to cover it up just because they can't afford. The town of Vegas cannot afford people thinking people are targeting Vegas for shootings.
Right.
So they're definitely not going to allow a terrorism.
Well, that's their motivation. You know what I mean? There's different motivations in the cover-up of the Kennedy assassination too. People had different axes to cover up. I mean that's the hotel angle. You know what I mean? There's also the fact that the Saudis, the Royal Air Force is in 2 floors that they own right above this shooting and flew out U.S. jets that they bought a couple of days later in formation back to Saudi Arabia. Nobody seems to find this to be unusual.
And that's what people underappreciate when they say, oh, a broad conspiracy can never happen.
No.
Two things. It's like, one, they happen all the time, and we know them throughout all of history. So there's that historical reality.
Right.
My brother explains it in his book, How Do We Know? And he goes through all he's quoting me in part, but he has me as a different personality in the book. I think Paul or something. But lays out all the reasons. Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
So Alan Dershowitz read your brother's book. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically. I tell people you don't have, if anything went wrong or sideways, my twin brother Paul did it. We even got a T-shirt. It says my twin brother Paul did it.
That's funny.
Yeah, exactly. And I have proof that Paul exists because no less authority than Alan Dershowitz identified him publicly and thought I was my twin brother.
Wow.
But which is just fascinating.
Well, people still think there was no conspiracy in killing Lincoln. They think it was a lone nutty actor.
Exactly.
I mean, to this day, who did they hang in the middle of the fort? The conspirators. Well, how could it be a conspiracy? Well, they had conspirators. I don't know. They hung them.
Well, that's why the most memeable moment in the Alex Jones trial, no matter the goal was to destroy him in the court of public opinion. Say basically Alex Jones is dead. Alex Jones is over. Alex Jones is gone.
Right.
That instead, what became the news story in so many parts of the independent media was the joke that is the trial itself. But the most memeable moment is the one where the plaintiff's lawyer was so delusional as to say, how can you believe this crazy thing about politicians and powerful people being involved in sex rings and da-da-da. And in a surprising understated fashion, Jones goes, do you mean Epstein and the Clintons?
That's great. That was great.
They've taken that. They've now thrown Joe Rogan into the meme.
Yeah. I saw the Rogan one.
They have the Thug Life meme with Alex Jones.
Yeah.
That's what everybody's going to remember from the trial. But that's because, I mean, just like they want to make conspiracies illegal and you bankruptable in the Alex Jones, that's the real precedent they're trying to set. The goal of trying to discredit them fails to not only look at history, but also fails the way in which these really function. As you point out, like, why does Earl Warren go along with the Kennedy assassination, the nonsense the Warren Commission spews out?
He scared him of a nuclear third world war.
Which was brilliant on Lyndon Johnson.
Which I think that was the quid pro quo that he gave to the generals. And then I think he effed the generals, but he said, you want your war? Here's your effing war. But that was a prize that was not the original prize that they wanted. And he gave them that as a compromise.
And even though they effectively neutered Bobby Kennedy, so the mob got at least a little bit of something out of this, they didn't get Cuba, which was their prize too. So I mean, the deep state's whole pitch was, we're going to get to go into Cuba, we're going to get to prove our position. Now, LeMay and the rest had much broader objectives. LeMay, he wanted to wage nuclear war on Russia right out of the gate. That's like when people are looking at China, Taiwan right now, we have some of the same lunatic generals that we had back in the 60s. They think we could really win a war with Russia. They think a nuclear war with Russia. They think we could really win. It's not a coincidence. You saw these blue checkmark types out of the blue several months ago saying, well, would a limited nuclear war be so bad with Russia?
That's why we ran that PSA in the front of the episode.
In New York City.
Yeah. That's for the elites. That's for the elites. Yeah,
exactly.
That apartment looked like somebody in Soho who, had acted in 20 Hollywood films, that apartment. I mean, maybe that apartment will survive. I don't know. It's got a doorman. Maybe the doorman will help.
These people are as nuts as LeMay. I mean, LeMay's theory was, well, we're definitely going to get into war anyway, so why not take them out now?
Right. It was depicted by George C. Scott, by the way, in Dr. Strangelove.
Yes, perfectly. That nails LeMay to a T.
That's George C. Scott.
And then, then LeMay famously runs with George Corley Wallace in 1968. The problem for Wallace is LeMay could not keep his mouth shut. He kept saying, nuclear war. And so Wallace of all people.
I think the plan was for Wallace to win and then Bremer to come in and do what he did. Yes. And then all of a sudden, LeMay's the president. I don't think it's that big of a strength.
I think Wallace always, the fascinating thing with Wallace is he was a mixed personality.
Yeah.
I always said the crimes of George Wallace are the crimes of a politician.
Right.
There was a time when he was populist with Big Jim Folsom. Then he does lose running for one office, and he thinks it's because he's too liberal on civil rights, because Folsom was famously liberal on civil rights. He brought Adam Clayton Powell down to the State House in Alabama. Folsom was once caught live on TV with bourbon. And he said, don't worry, folks, this is just a little bit of Alabama branch water. That's how he tried to get out. So Big Jim was great, old school character. Wallace then converts to being the racist candidate.
Right.
And he gets into bed with the Klan and the deep state and military power, which they were never going to actually let him wield power at a presidential level. He took the bait on that, made a mistake on that. Now, there were people who are willing to do the same thing, going back to the Smedley Butler plot with Huey Long. In 1936, a bunch of people were going to fund Huey Long's independent campaign. There were these deep state guys that hate FDR. And this was more in the private side of the deep state because the governmental side of it was still weak prior to World War II. But, some big oil money, some other big chemical money, DuPonts, et cetera. And Long thought they were idiots. He was like, I'm going to take these boys for a ride. I'm going to take their cash, then dump them when I get in. But Long was politically ruthless, like DeSantis. Long went and realized, I'm going to use every political tool that I have. This is what Bobby Kennedy did when he was Attorney General. Yep. I'm going to use every political tool I have ruthlessly to go after people. I'm going to go after LBJ by going after Bobby Baker and the crew.
Jimmy Hoffa.
I'm going to go after Jimmy Hoffa. I'm going to go after organized crime. And that shows how naive they were. It's like, because you couldn't go after these people without blowback. And then John Kennedy helped elevate.
I think that's why Bobby Kennedy tried to undermine the Garrison investigation. I think he wanted to do it himself when and if he ever got into office, and he didn't want all this, flotsam and jetsam.
His goal was clearly to sneak back in. The problem was there were still too many giveaways. No Secret Service, refused Secret Service protection. Then he finally says it a week before California.
Well, he wants to get rid of the Secret Service even before Dallas. He wanted them replaced. He didn't trust them, and we found out why. We're going to do an episode on just Secret Service, Eric and I, and we'll explore that.
To give an analogous version, look at how Trump talk about firing FBI guys, fired James Comey.
That's right.
He understood the system by that point was so corrupt.
Yes.
He had to have his private bodyguard secretly deliver the letter to him while he was outside of FBI headquarters.
You cannot trust anybody but your own, even if you're the president of the United States. That's just a fact, and we've learned the hard way. I mean, we've learned the hard way. You can't. This is a rogue, miniature, corrupt Praetorian Guard, the Secret Service. Nobody ever looks at this at their operation. You know what I mean, Ron? They look at the FBI, they look at this, but the Secret Service has got to be put under a freaking microscope because nobody can trust these guys.
Well, I mean, you think about it. When have they ever actually protected the president? I mean, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, they let Reagan get shot by Hinckley. They reacted at least, which is more than what they did with Greer in the driver's seat of the car when Kennedy gets shot. He waits for an hour and a half and then drives to Parkland. But yeah, I mean, Hinckley got off a quick round or two.
Yeah, I mean, Hinckley was supposed to have killed Reagan. I mean, it was Poppy Bush was supposed to be president in 1981.
Well, Hinckley's on Twitter now.
Hold on. He has a YouTube channel.
He's got a YouTube channel now, Hinckley. I don't even have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, okay, hold on.
You know, there's a missionary
organization. Who's going to be verified first?
Right, in
Hinckley
Hawaii.
or us?
What's that?
Who's going to get verified first, though? Hinckley or us?
Oh, Hinckley's going to be a blue check. I'm telling you, he's going to be completly huge. What has he got? 49,000 now, Eric?
I haven't checked.
Last time I looked.
Speaking of which, like all the evidence that the judge kept out of the Alex Jones case because she doesn't want the film crew to have to cover it in the documentary, because as long as they're covering court proceedings, they're completely immune from libel suits, but they have to cover the court proceedings fair and neutrally. So by her allowing in a bunch of evidence that shouldn't have been let in against Jones, not allowing him to present any defense, even if it was irrelevant, she gives them immunity from libel suits for their future hit job on HBO or Netflix or wherever it's at. That's the kind of backstory. That's why they only covered me saying the judge has scripted this for a particular future audience, et cetera. Right. They didn't want anything outside those 5 seconds covered, and the judge wouldn't allow it.
That? What was the next?
Because
thing?
What I said before and after was there's 3 movie cameras in the room,
and
the reason why the judge is only letting in some evidence and not letting in other evidence. And they didn't want any of that.
They didn't want a reference to the movie cameras,
even though by rules of evidence under the rule of completeness, the judge was actually obligated to introduce that.
How is this not overturned by the Texas Supreme Court, Robert?
It's all about whether they take discretion. The only weakness is it's going to be a court of public opinion issue because it's the Texas Supreme Court hearing enough people that have some weight of political opinion saying we can't let this stand. Hate Alex Jones all you want, we can't let this stand.
Right.
Enough people saying that the Texas Supreme Court says, okay, we had 2 justices before. We only need 1 more for them to take it, and then it's 7 Republican conservative judges up there.
Right. Okay.
So
are you still down there, by the way? Are you in Texas?
Yeah, I leave tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Take off tomorrow morning. So we
should do his. If he's not around, we should do a show and just talk about this stuff on his show. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, you notice anything that he covers, they hit him for.
Right.
I mean, it's extraordinary. There's all the judge's crazy Facebook feed, which has her pro lockdown, stay home, stay
I'm
safe.
Shocked. I'm
pro
shocked.
Vaccine mandate,
pro mask, except for this trial, I guess.
Pro, has rainbows and all. It's basically she's against. You couldn't find someone who would hate Alex Jones more.
I love that they gave him the photo of her on fire. You know what I mean?
What they did is they had to pause and freeze it because what it is it shows the judge and then it shows Lady Justice on fire.
Right.
And they had to make it look like he had put the judge on fire, which was totally false.
Wow.
By the way, none of it is admissible evidence, but they also wouldn't show the rest of that clip.
It reminds me of the former governor of Alaska who may not put circular targets on different people.
It's the same pattern. So he didn't even broadcast any of her social media stuff, which shows her prejudice or bias, because he didn't want anybody to misinterpret it and claim, he's trying to do something totally false. I mean, all of it was false. They introduced no evidence that he ever gave anybody's home address. That was always fiction, always fabrication. All this stuff that was just mythology about him.
Hold on, Eric's got something to say here.
Well, okay, there's a couple things. One, I got a few super chats I probably need
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
through.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Two, and you can answer this question. Did anybody else notice that the judge let the plaintiff's lawyer kind of go on to this little lecture, and then finally there was an objection from the defense, and then the judge said, yeah, go ahead and don't say that. Is it just me, or was maybe some of that getting all captured for later footage, and then we'll go ahead and say, yeah, shut up.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Everything she was doing, I understood once I saw the movie Cruise. I was like,
I didn't know there was a movie crew. This is all news to me. I didn't follow it that
three
closely.
massive. Well, the media didn't cover that. That there were three,
okay, all right.
a whole movie crew in there. But when you're in the courtroom,
let me just back up for a second. How did they get rid of Rekieta? How did that happen? I don't understand. What?
So
that's
magical timing. I mean, it's not a surprise that a lot of some people have asked me have been agitated because they took LawTube as a straightforward. And I've said, look, LawTube is covering celebrity cases. That's what most of LawTube is.
Right.
God bless them. They're not, they're not people I look to as a source. So good luck to them, etc. But, it didn't surprise me that they were all terrified to cover Jones in an honest way that would expose the problems with the case. The only people who've covered it for the most part, other than Viva and Robert Groubert, are people that are critical or negative of Alex Jones.
Oh, okay.
Which the YouTube I'll have no problems with. But the one guy who's got the biggest live trial coverage, the one guy who's willing to challenge somebody doing bogus copyright strikes on sharing the video broadcast from the courtroom, the one guy who would expose the corruption and insanity of what was taking place in the Alex Jones guy is the one guy they magically suspend for the whole trial.
But based on what? What were the grounds for his suspension?
It wasn't even clear.
It was a YouTube thing.
Okay, right.
Yeah, it was YouTube just suspended
something in one-year videos did this, but they don't.
The Soviet Politburo did not give a reason for their suspension.
Exactly.
But I meant to mention this before because of the super chat. The Veritas taking of the phones and the information is very similar to the Alex Jones situation, where they then get a court order saying you can't use the stuff that you illegally seized, which you already have downloaded and disseminated to the New York Times. There seems to be a pattern, Robert.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're jumping up and down. Well, they're all, some of the plaintiffs' lawyers are obsessed with me anyway. As soon as I walked in, I haven't been called Bobby since I was 10 years old.
There's Bobby.
Yeah, he was jumping up and down. Bobby Barnes.
Bobby Barnes.
I mean, he looked like a leprechaun on meth. He reminded me of Cartman's speech about gingers being evil. I was like, you just got to change.
I bet you that lawyer used to eat Lucky Charms when he was
how
a kid.
old is that lawyer?
Yeah, he eats Lucky Charms.
It comes off like, honestly, some of his presentation, his Perry Mason moment reminded me of high school debate.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not kidding. It was not a.
Dude, that guy was Adderalled out. He was gacking out.
Well, remember, he is the guy that Viva covered. That was how I met Viva.
What?
Viva covered the Alex Jones deposition.
That was him back then?
That was him. That's the guy Viva takes apart and says, in Viva's very gentle way, this is probably not the best way to do this. And so Viva does it gentle, but basically says this lawyer's an idiot. Talking about the plaintiff's lawyer. Like, this is the worst deposition presentation I've ever seen.
I had no idea that, because I was sitting there saying, again, I don't know all this, but that whole thing, I was like, you do have a bombshell moment here, but you sound like the biggest smug dick I've heard and I felt like just his presentation made him despicable. He's like, oh, Mr. Jones.
Oh boy,
you didn't know this.
He went to the Binger School of Law, apparently.
Oh yeah, Binger is a class.
Binger's still smoother compared to this guy.
Binger's classy.
Right. Okay.
But that whole, Mr. Jones, you didn't know this. And it's just a little lecture. I'm like, what in God's name?
I know that. I've never seen a lawyer say, hey, everybody, I just got illegal information. I illegally obtained it, and now I'm going to illegally share it. Isn't that great?
I just like how we've come from no cameras in the courtroom to Leni Riefenstahl filming the triumph of the will with multiple cameras. The gap is so enormous that they have used for no legal reason.
And I've never seen this. Again, the court has its own cameras. So what people
we're going to do that, by the way, John.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Cool.
For people that are seeing the court broadcast, that's the court's cameras. That's not the movie cameras.
Right, I understand.
The movie cameras are for people out there like, oh, I didn't see anything fancy. There's three, and what it is not only that, she's designed the court cameras so you can't see that there are movie cameras in the
What
courtroom.
are they, under cloak, under box? Are they
They're
boxed in?
situated just back enough off of the view of what she's allowed to be shown from the. That's why she's allowing jurors to be seen on the camera,
Right.
because she wants to make sure that the camera doesn't catch
is
all the
crazy.
movie cameras in the room.
This is insane. This is
Completely.
insane.
Completely, all of it.
I mean,
at every
where does
level.
the money go? Does the money go to the state of Texas? I mean, in the movie deal, does it go to?
It's free. It's free to the movie deal. I mean, it's a political trade-off, is what it really
Right.
is.
All
So
right.
they asked for permission. She gave them, and she gave them exclusive permission.
The attorney general should sue the movie company to get the money back for the people of Texas if it makes any profits in a film deal selling it to HBO. If you're listening, Paxton, get work.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, and some of those Texas people should step up and where they can. People would ask me, can they pardon them? That's only in a criminal case, not a civil case.
Right.
But they could preempt any
Can
nonsense.
she be impeached, the judge? Is there an impeachment process in Texas?
I believe there is. And I think that they have to start looking at things like that.
You have to.
Because,
look, even if you lose, you got to start throwing garbage at them. You can't just let them operate like that crazy judge had in D.C. that had Roger Stone and Manafort and later.
There's got to be consequences.
There's got to be some consequences,
Yeah,
even if you don't win the impeachment.
Right.
You know, like we were saying now, where are the impeachment proceedings against Biden? You know, obviously some Green started them, I guess, but you know, what are you going to do? Wait till January 15th? I mean, let's go. Let's get it going here.
Yeah, and against all the other different corrupt actors and complicit participants. Though, the way Jill was talking about Joe, I do think they're about to toss him from the curb.
Yeah.
She was saying, "Oh, he's through so much stress," and they keep
it's
giving
too
the guy COVID. They're like, "Come on. One more COVID, you got to go out the door, Joe."
Every guy who visits him has tested positive for COVID. They just keep sending in visitors. Here's another kid, Joe. Sniff her hair.
Yeah.
The hair is covered with COVID. Good luck.
Yeah, exactly.
They're sending in food in petri dishes filled with COVID. They're like, look, it's a Chinese meal.
And I guess they think they're going to anoint Newsom in 2024 because the problem is everybody else is even less popular than Biden. Kamala Harris is even less popular.
The taking out
Buttigieg,
the governor of New York was designed to free up not Kamala Harris. It's for Newsom. He's going to be the future.
Well, I think Harris, she was partially pushing the recall, hoping it would weaken Newsom because he comes from that different side. People don't understand Harris and Willie Brown were on the opposite side of the Pelosi, Feinstein, Newsom regime.
Yeah, I mean, Larry Elder, unfortunately said the base of the party is Kamala Harris's base. I don't know how Newsom outflanks or outfoxes Kamala Harris because the base of the Democratic Party is black women.
And they both have dirt on each other. The key to watch is do they, if they're serious about replacing Biden, I think they do take out Harris first.
They have to. They have to.
She's just tough. Unlike Agnew, she is not going to go gently in that good night.
Right. Well, she's
all I would say is don't take any Ron Brown special commerce trips to
Wait a minute. What are you trying to suggest here, Barnes? Wait a minute.
All right, I'm going to sneak these in.
Go ahead, rock them up.
We only have a few, but we'll just really fast. Folks, this is freeform, so we can't really address a lot of super chats. I apologize on it, but have you heard of Stacey Abrams' new scam? She's used her organization's monies to pay off $200+ million in medical bills for voters in red states.
Wow. I had not heard about that. It wouldn't surprise me. It's her machine that ginned up the 2020 outcome because I had people do an analysis and the overvote in 2018 matched the overvote in 2020, and that came from her political machine.
Good question. Why do we have enforcement in every three-letter organization? Good question. Well, why do we have so many?
We should not have. How about this arming of the IRS with guns now?
They should have never given nerds with guns in the first
they've
place.
been armed with guns for a long time.
What are they doing with guns?
We had people here, the Jewish mother, you'll appreciate it, Mark, a deli where they came in with guns to a full restaurant of customers.
Right.
And I think it was even covered on the news because, people were like laid out over the table saying, oh, my God.
Because the deli owed back taxes or something?
It was some tax thing. And by the way, nothing ever happened.
Right.
No charges, nothing else, completely
designed to intimidate.
Exonerated. But total strong arm tactics.
Wow.
Robert, you still expecting Trump and DeSantis together?
Oh, yeah. Very, very high chance. It's best for both of them.
Really? That's the way you're going now?
I think so.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I think that's already been done.
Especially if they
Deal's
want
already been
12
done.
years. I mean, Trump's got one. Trump has one term.
Trump needs indictment insurance. Trump needs impeachment insurance.
Okay, but what happens
Trump
to the state of Florida? Does he do an LBJ where he says if he loses, he's still governor?
Well, yes, because he would, but it would be the last 2 years of his second term. So
Wait. Are you saying that DeSantis is going to be the vice presidential on this ticket coming? Okay, does he leave the state of Florida as governor?
If he wins, then yes.
No. By running, does he?
Oh no. You can say governor.
It varies state by state because LBJ got the law changed just for him to do it. So I'm wondering if that's legal in the state of Florida. Is my question.
Oh, I mean, to my knowledge, yeah, absolutely.
Okay, all right.
Now he plans, I believe, given the.
Wait a second. Who's this asking a question? Was this a guy from the road? Who's this?
Yeah, apparently.
Yeah.
He's got time to do this while he's driving this guy?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, he doesn't have time to be here.
Does he
but
pull over on the side of the road? Why does he come on the show?
Yeah. Well,
Thank
I
you,
think
Rob.
hopefully all that gets overturned.
But you're saying that DeSantis and Trump are going to be the ticket. He'll do 4 years, Trump, and then it'll be DeSantis, which is fine.
If it develops the way it should develop, DeSantis will take lead on a lot of domestic legislative and executive policy, and Trump lead on foreign policy. And since he's only there 4 years, it gives DeSantis a heads up on getting 8 years, because usually that's tough for a vice president to do
that's
8 plus
tough.
8.
I mean, how many VPs have succeeded and become presidents?
I mean, especially to be 2 terms. But when you're only following a 1-term guy, different dynamic. Yeah. So I think it's more like the Teddy Roosevelt.
I mean, Bush could have had an extra term if Hinckley was more accurate, you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. So and I think we'll see.
Well, hold on.
It makes sense.
How far was Reagan into his presidency?
Early, it was 1981.
It was early.
So then that would be a screw up, because the ideal would be technically it'd be 2 years in. About February of.
They didn't want to run.
It's like the Chicago plot, Eric. It wasn't perfect, so we had to go to Dallas.
Okay, look, I got to ask the dumb
questions. These are not foolproof plots.
There's a reason I'm here. Got to ask the dumb ones. Don't get this. Biden and the Sun. It was the SS. The
Secret Service.
Secret Service that got the NISC for him when they bought the handgun.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
But nothing was done about the case.
Thanks, Don. Thank you.
Let me see. Sorry for the off topic. Barnes, you saw the smoke shop stabbing in Vegas. I agree with the outcome, right to defend and whatnot. I still think it wasn't self-defense. Your thoughts?
I have not seen it.
I have not seen it. I don't know.
All right. Dick Morris has an interesting theory of HRC coming to save the party from AOC.
She's just toxic. She's so toxic.
What about Michelle Obama?
Actually, that's a good. That's a good
Michelle Obama? Yeah.
No, Hillary and AOC would be just like the two of them. Oh my God! The
postal office has always had guns. I don't. They've had inspectors with guns forever.
Oh, that goes way back. The post office used to be the place you doled out the machine benefits. Remember Jim Farley? You used to ran under FDR. You got a postal job based on whether your party won last year.
They used to have guys in the Irish situation in New York where they would give you a haircut when you came out from voting and send you back in with a different look.
Exactly.
They shave your beard and give you a haircut.
Okay, now just to clarify here, this is what I was talking about when I said they needed to be 2 years in. The only way a U.S. president can serve 10 years, though, is if they take over for somebody mid-office and then get reelected or get elected and then reelected. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's my understanding.
It could have been Gerald Ford, right?
I mean, I mean, look at Ford. Ford, I think he's almost a trick question. I'm not sure if there's anybody else that fits this. There might be.
Only an elected president?
Yes.
Yeah, no, it's him. How about his vice president, Nelson Rockefeller? Everybody forgets that Rockefeller was his vice president.
I mean, that was so overt.
Right.
That was so obvious what was going on. The guy that sat on the Warren Commission that helped cover up the Kennedy assassination.
It was payback for altering the Warren Commission autopsy report by hand by Gerald Ford, who admitted it, who moved the shoulder shot up to the back of the neck. And you could take the case apart a billion different ways, as I've always said, but that one is one of my favorites because he did it, his handwriting, he admitted it, and he became president.
The ultimate counter to everybody who says a conspiracy theory can't happen is the Kennedy assassination.
Right, but I'm saying within that, here's Gerald Ford himself altering the autopsy by crossing out the description, moving the bullet hole from the back of the right shoulder, which only went in 3/4 of an inch, never traversed, and moving it up to the back of the neck because the entrance wound to the throat never traversed out the back. But he did that. He did that. And he said he did it for the good of the American people.
Yeah.
That's why he did it. And he said it.
And Arlen Specter parlayed being an assistant low-level prosecutor into being a United States senator.
Let me tell you something.
His loyal service to the
At
Warren
least we
Commission.
pay people back in this country for doing crap. You know what I mean?
Right.
We pay people back for doing evil in this country.
Ooh, trans prep for Michael Obama.
Michelle Obama hates politics. She will never run
she
for
ain't
office.
gonna do it. She ain't gonna do it.
Yeah,
I think that they got what they wanted. Mark and I have talked about that. I think
they got the
Obama,
money.
he's just chilling. He's like fine. He's done.
Doing a little.
You know what?
weed,
I
playing a little
sent you
game.
the thing. We got contacted by Bolden's attorneys, and I had suggested that maybe Obama was involved in the pardon of Bolden, and the guy said no. He never lifted a finger. It was Trump. Trump was the one who started the thing to pardon Abraham Bolden. It was finished off
with Jack Johnson. And
he did Jack Johnson. He did Little Wayne. I mean, remember all the guys that he pardoned, Robert?
Oh yeah.
The whole black,
buddy.
all those black intelligentsia and black athletes.
Yeah, I mean, he also really pardoned a key money guy behind a whole bunch of things in L.A. I mean, it's a guy that's connected to Suge Knight, a guy that's connected to the Ramparts division, a guy connected to a lot of the CIA drug running activities. There's a lot of stuff that he's been alleged to be connected to at some level.
Right.
And
Who's that, Ricky Barnes you're talking
about? Not him. It was another one. Well, maybe no. What it was?
Wasn't Freeway Ricky Barnes?
It wasn't.
That's Rick Ross. He's already clear. Rick Ross.
He was already out. But it was somebody associated, affiliated with him. Somebody who was the real financier behind Suge Knight early on. I mean, it's a fascinating. It ties in L.A., Hollywood, music culture, drugs, gangs, politics, CIA. You have all of it in that one guy's story.
Well,
but the media didn't cover it much at all.
In the Bolden episode that we did, I was just speculating that because of Chicago and the Bolden family that maybe Obama had been involved. But this guy said, pardons went all the way back to Nixon. Every single presidency said no because they didn't want to upset the deep state, Robert.
No. And Obama was
Who did it? Trump did it.
Deep state guy. Obama was always a deep state guy.
Yeah.
You don't go from Occidental College to a privileged scholarship at Columbia with a sweetheart gig in a corporate consulting front unless a 3-letter agency is sponsoring you. Just
How
like
about the Saudis paying his tuition? How about that? That very rarely happened in my family.
Well, I mean, his dad, he exists because his dad was one of the people that was partially came in on a sincere effort that Kennedy had set up. But that had been co-opted by the time his dad came into the States and got extended deals, which was part of attempts to the CIA to infiltrate African governments.
Well, he also impregnated all these girls at Harvard, and the mothers wrote letters saying he's going to have to go, or we're pulling out kids out of Harvard.
The mother, of course, had deep ties, and then his grandmother was tied into one of the big bank elite financial institutions. That's why he went to one of the
family at the CIA, folks. We got an entire
episode because we're going to do this CIA in the art world, and you'll find out about Jackson Pollock and Mark Rothko and everybody else in the abstract world who are linked to the CIA.
Letter X, Mark. LBJ's Letter X. Have you ever heard of this?
No, I have not.
Okay. I hope there is such a letter, but the LBJ confess. He just doesn't strike me as the confessional type.
No, get dropped dimes on people. Not the confession.
My favorite scene of LBJ, which is in my script, is at the very end of his life. He was sneaking out in the middle of the night to go to this hamburger joint in Austin, and they told him not to eat bad foods and smoke and drink. So of course that's all he did. But he would come home and he'd sit there by himself, weeping, smoking, listening to Bridge Over Troubled Waters by Simon and Garfunkel, and the record would go on repeat, and he'd sing along to Bridge Over Troubled Water, and then he had a heart attack and died. That's the God's honest truth.
Wow.
All right.
You can't make this stuff up.
Everybody's going to hate me, but we're getting into last call territory here.
What?
Todd Larson.
It's not fair. Barnes got here late.
Oh, come on. Question that stumped my professor. If Trump resigns in 2026 and DeSantis serves 10 years, can Trump run again? Yeah, he'll be 100. No, I'm just kidding.
He'll be 100.
I think it's 2 terms max now.
Yeah,
totally,
2 terms.
Right?
Yeah.
I thought. I haven't looked at the amendment in a little while, but that was my recollection.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, that just seems like a weird one.
That's
but folks, we always got to do at least a short pitch.
Yeah,
we have merch.
You got Patsy the dog, Patsy Oswald the dog.
Yeah,
oh, there's
Oswald.
that dog. Woof,
Look at
woof.
cute, adorable little dog.
Out.
And by the way, another Oswald sold today.
What?
All right, there you go.
Mark keeps mocking the dog. Folks, buy the dog to spite Mark. I mean, come on.
Hey, I got the hat, but the hat's the best thing of all the merch.
Yeah, the hat's good.
The hats are great. It's a real.
You got the T-shirt.
Hat. Well, you got a bucket hat too.
You got the Bucker, the fisherman's hat.
Yeah.
And we got a polo if you want to dress up a little bit. And
Hold
everything else.
I just want to get a sip of coffee from my
your two-handed coffee from Ziggy Shrugs.
And you can get exclusive content at unstructured.locals.com.
That's true.
And there it is down there,
true, my friends.
So
if you want to contribute to the book fund, don't forget PayPal. That works effectively until they take me down and everybody else.
Lord Buckley? Is it that?
It's in the description.
It's in the description down below.
PayPal, Venmo. I'm on PayPal, Venmo.
Yeah, we got to pay for all those books, Robert. I mean, that one that you got is $60. I had to buy a couple more for one for Tom.
I think everybody's got a copy of that.
Everybody's got one now.
Yeah.
Everyone but me has this goddamn book.
Somebody was telling us in the chat before that they saw somebody on a park bench in Austin.
Yeah, I saw a homeless guy
just reading, going through it.
I got to a wrestling match with the guy, but he was only on page 600 at that point of the book. So.
Exactly, and they were headed into
I'll tell you something else that I found, if this is a little tidbit. Turns out that when JFK was going to Chicago for that Chicago plot, he was going to Soldier Field in Chicago to witness a football game, which every single book ever written said was the Army-Navy game. That he was going to attend, and there was 60,000 people there, and the game went off, and it was not the Army-Navy game. It was the Army versus the Air Force, and there was a guy sitting in the stands waiting for JFK, and his name was Curtis LeMay, Robert.
By the way, we've succeeded to a new level. We actually have bots that are breaking through, so either the bots are subscribing or it's been hacked.
Wow.
So on that note,
the invasion of the bot people. That's great. As long as they pay, what do we care?
Well, we care. I don't know, but I am going to escape before the bots completely take over. And everybody, see you next time. Robert,
thank you.
See you in a month or sooner.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.